As the barrier around the two goons started to crack, there was still enough time. It could still work, I thought, as I focused, concentrating the liquid metal that I held as a hammer into a drill, floating in the air beside me, extending from it a very thin wire, connecting it to a small amount of liquid steel in my hand. With a thought, I forced the drill to spin wildly, and then sent it hurtling into the concrete beneath me, drilling into the stone, burrowing its way down. This has to work, I thought. In a few moments, you could no longer hear the drill burrowing its way through the concrete. The noise of the environment completely covered it up. And it was at that point, the cracks in the barrier that I had put around those two goons spread out even more, stacking on top of each other one after another until it exploded outward, pieces of the liquid steel fracturing out in every direction as the shield around the two goons expanded widely, forcing its way out, shattering the thin membrane of liquid steel that I had put around them. I began pulling the liquid steel back to me, liquefying it. As it all flowed back in my direction, the two goons started taking note of their surroundings, seeing their friend flailing wildly, punching at the air as if there was something there to hit, and their other friend lying unconscious on the concrete ground, and me standing there with the liquid metal starting to pour back in my direction. "Fuck," the concrete guy said. "This little motherfucker," he said, raising one of his hands as concrete around me began to move and swirl again, rolling in my direction, pieces tearing up, starting to fly my way. I took off in their direction, meeting up with the liquid steel that I had taken from the barrier around them as it started to coat the outside of my body, and a small, unnoticeable bit running to an ever-extending line, a thin wire that they couldn't see in all the chaos. The concrete quickly gave chase, starting to move rapidly in my direction. As they saw me approaching, Barrier Boy raised his hand, producing a shield in between them and me. This time, not a sphere around them. He didn't want a repeat of the last time. This time it was just a wall. But now, both of them were starting to look frustrated, panicky. They didn't have any time to adjust. They thought everything was going their way up until a few seconds ago. They thought they were gonna do me in, just sitting back watching a show. But now I could tell they were starting to get worried. It was at that point that the ground right beside them burst open, a shiny steel drill emerging from the small space in between the two. As it did, liquefying for just a moment, turning into a hand-like shape, grasping the face of the guy making the shields, gripping onto it tightly, and then turning back to its steel form again. I stopped giving length to the wire as I ran, and suddenly he felt his head being pulled down towards the hole that had popped up as I was pulling the wire as I ran, slamming his head down into the concrete. The barrier he put up dropped. Concrete Boy was stunned, even if only for a few moments. He looked over, seeing his friend get his head pulled into a hole in stone, and was freaking out about it. By the time his attention turned back towards me, I was almost all the way there. He freaked out, raising his hands and producing a wall of concrete, ripping it up from the ground in front of him. I forged every bit of liquid steel I had on me into essentially what added up to nothing but a giant wrecking ball attached to a small chain. A small, thin chain leading back into my grasp. With everything I had as I approached at top speed, I swung it around in a circle, spinning as I did, sending that wrecking ball directly into that wall of concrete, smashing right through it, nailing Concrete Boy right in the gut, sending him flying backwards. Barrier Boy had also dropped the shield, stopping the police and the spectators from getting involved. So he just kept flying, soaring straight back, smashing into a cop car. As he impacted the front side end, you could hear the steel of the car warping, the entire thing bending and bowing inward as a giant wrecking ball with a bandana douchebag hit it. Hard enough that squad car was basically going to be useless from now on. It was totaled. But as I pulled the wrecking ball back, I noted that I had successfully, let's call it, neutralized one asshole. He just sat there in the craterous pit in the steel car, or what was left of it, not moving. Meanwhile, his friend, the shield guy, like his other friend, was panicking, trying to pull the solid steel mask I had created off his face, get some air, and finding it very useless. I began to wrap the liquid steel that I had collected around my body again, but instead of changing it into the armor, which would have taken a fair amount of time, I allowed it to stay in its liquid state, just ebbing and flowing around me, like I was wearing a suit of water. As I slowly approached him, gathering a larger amount of the liquid steel to my right arm, I hardened it into what essentially amounted to a battering ram on my fist. And as the liquid metal on his face liquefied, pulling back to me, and he gasped to catch a breath, and the light returned to him, the only thing he found was me standing over him with a giant right-handed downward hook slamming his head back into the concrete, to which he stopped moving. Out cold, no doubt about it, leaving just then. I looked over to see the giant, the guy with the dreadlocks and super strength, still flailing around, still trying to pull the liquid metal out of his face, and not having any luck of it. "You know what, big guy?" I shouted over to him as I slowly started pacing in his direction. "You're full of shit. I like a lot of things in this world. I like heavy metal, rock and roll, punk rock. I like the feel of a guitar in my hands. I like relaxing with some good friends and a few beers. I like taking shots on the weekend when it doesn't matter if you wake up with a hangover. But you know what I don't like?" I said, still walking in his direction. He heard me as I spoke, beginning to dash out, running towards me, but without the ability to see, going only on sound, even as fast as he was, which was fast. He didn't know where to swing. I dodged him easily. Without the full armor in its form, moving was way easier like this. What I don't like is entitled assholes like you, who get an ounce of power and suddenly think that everyone else belongs to them, that you can take whatever you want from whoever you want, because you have the power to do it. You don't care who you hurt or why, so long as it benefits you. The lives of innocent people mean nothing, not to someone like you. But you're wrong. People's lives don't belong to you. People shouldn't have to live in fear, I said, as he continued, again and again to dart in my direction, swinging punch after punch futilely, still suffocating, unable to see, smashing into the concrete ground over and over again, shattering it to pieces with that muscle of his, but not hitting me. People deserve to live lives where they can be happy. People deserve to have lives of peace and to know the things that they have, that they love, are safe. You know, people keep on telling me tonight that I'm playing hero, trying to be their white knight, like in the old fairy tales, that sort of stuff doesn't exist, that I'm an idiot, a fool, and that I should be punished for trying to make it happen. But so what? So what if white knights are fake? So what if they're fictional? If I have the power to help people, to do something, why the hell shouldn't I do it? So you can call me whatever the hell you want. Armor Boy, Tin Man, a wannabe white knight, or hell, just a metalhead, way too into rock and roll, I said, as at this point, he stopped being able to chase after me, collapsing to his knees, trying to get air, and failing. But I said, approaching him as he kneeled down, I'll be whatever I have to be to make sure people like you don't get your way. That you can't ruin people's lives for your own gain. If New Star City needs a knight in shining armor, and I'm all they've got, then I'll be one, even if I don't fit the profile. Fuck it all. I'll be my own kind of knight, I said, raising my hand. The liquid metal that I had collected, all of it except the bit that was covering my face, and his, gathering into a steel ball, floating above him, higher and higher, as high as I could fucking manage. If that's what it takes, then I'll be a heavy metal knight that watches over New Star City, I said, pulling that giant steel ball down with everything I had, right on top of him. The impact was massive, sending concrete and stone flying out in every direction, and Big Brawny finally stopped moving. A lack of air plus a wrecking ball on top of him seemed to be enough to shut that mouth of his.